I want you to imagine, just for a second, that you're standing at a busy intersection in the heart of modern Thessaloniki in Greece.
Right in the thick of it.
Exactly. Picture it, you've got, cars zooming past. There's that rhythmic hum of city traffic, neon lights reflecting off shop windows, and people just rushing by with their coffees.
Sounds like basically any modern European city center on a Tuesday.
Right. It feels entirely present. It feels like entirely modern. But what you are completely unaware of as you stand on that asphalt, what you can't see, is that a stunning 6th century BC marble temple is buried just a few feet beneath your shoes.
Oh, such a wild image.
It really is. And, digging up these hidden layers of the city is exactly what we're doing today on behalf of the project. Oklos Ichitirdekitu Historia, Tuirini Keviti.
Which is just a fantastic initiative.
Totally. Our mission today is to basically peel back the asphalt on a very specific, fascinating place, which is Antigonidon Street and Square.
Yeah, and it is a striking image to hold in your mind, like you said. We tend to walk through modern cities assuming the ground beneath us is just this fixed, permanent foundation.
Yeah, like it's always been there.
Exactly. But urban spaces, particularly in a city as ancient as Thessaloniki, are incredibly porous. I mean, they are vertical timelines.
A vertical timeline. I like that.
Yeah, because when we look at the source material for this area, we aren't just reading a chronological list of historical events. We are examining this living canvas where every single layer from the deep underground up to the modern skyline reveals a story of destruction, rebirth, and honestly, just remarkable human adaptation.
Well, a vertical timeline is like the perfect way to look at it.
Yeah.
Because to really understand the surface we walk on today, we have to start at the bedrock of this street's identity.
The ghosts it's named after.
Exactly, the ghosts. We're going way back to the Hellenistic period, specifically to the Antigonid Dynasty, which ruled Macedonia from 294 BC to 168 BC.
Right, so these were the successors to Alexander the Great.
The guys who picked up the pieces.
Literally. When Alexander died, his massive, sprawling empire basically just shattered. It was carved up by his generals who, immediately began warring for dominance.
As they do.
As they do, right? And out of that chaos, the Antigonids eventually secured the Macedonian homeland, which was really the traditional heart of the empire.
And I gotta say, looking at the sources, the cast of characters leading this dynasty had some serious, heavy metal monikers.
Oh, absolutely.
It was founded by a general known as Antigonus I Monophthalmus, meaning the one-eyed, and his son, Demetrius the Poliorcites, which translates to the besieger.
The besieger. You don't get a name like that for being diplomatic.
Right. But the thing is, they weren't just warlords. I mean, this era brought immense economic prosperity to Macedonia.
Oh, definitely.
Their foreign policy was incredibly vast. It stretched across the agency into Asia Minor, all the way down to Cyprus. So, I mean, if you're a dynasty boxed in by other massive, heavily armed successor states like the Ptolemies in Egypt and the Seleucids in the East, how do you actually manage to hold on to that kind of sprawling regional power for over a century?
Well, you do it by fundamentally transforming the geopolitical mechanics of the region. I mean, the Antigonids didn't just rely on brute military force.
He couldn't, right. They'd just get crushed.
Exactly. They mastered the art of balancing power through deep economic integration and really strategic diplomacy. They effectively turned their territory into an indispensable commercial and cultural crossroads.
So they're playing 4D chess while everyone else is playing checkers.
Pretty much. They were, marrying into rival kingdoms one year and then going to war with them the next. They used alliances as this highly flexible tool to protect their massive maritime trade routes.
So they were essentially making themselves too economically valuable to be completely wiped out by their neighbors.
Precisely. And in doing so, they established a precedent for Thessaloniki as a cosmopolitan powerhouse. By bridging the East and the West through trade and diplomacy, they infused a specific cultural DNA into the region.
Right.
And that legacy of being a melting pot, a central hub where different cultures and goods just kind of violently and beautifully collide, that is a characteristic that the commercial center around Antigonidon Street still fiercely embodies today.
It's amazing how that energy just sticks around. But, every dynasty hits a wall eventually.
And for the Antigonids, that wall was Rome.
Yeah, the Romans. King Perseus, who was the last of the line, got decisively crushed by the expanding Roman Republic at the Battle of Pydna. in 168 BC.
A huge turning point.
Massive. And that Roman conquest wasn't just a change in management. It brings us to a literal physical rearranging of the earth, which actually explains the most astonishing secret buried directly beneath Antigonidon Square.
Yes, the hidden temple of Aphrodite.
This blows my mind.
It's incredible, because when the Romans took control of Macedonia, they were incredibly deliberate about how they managed the local population. They didn't just burn everything down, right?
Right.
They manipulated the landscape. So beneath the modern asphalt of the street lie the massive remains of a late archaic temple dedicated to the goddess Aphrodite.
Okay, let's define late archaic for a second, because the timeline here is just staggering. This means it dates to the 6th century BC,
Yeah,
making it roughly 150 years older than the Parthenon in Athens.
that's right. The Archaic period predates the famous classical era of Greece that we all think of. It's this time of early monumental stone architecture.
And it was built out of, what, Dacian marble?
Stunning Thascian marble. And because of its scale and beauty, archaeologists often refer to it as the small Parthenon of Thessaloniki. But, and this is the kicker, the most fascinating detail from our sources is not its age.
No, it's the fact that this temple wasn't originally built in Thessaloniki. It was the evidence suggests it was originally constructed in the ancient city of Ionia, which is modern-day Macedonia, and then it was relocated during the early Roman period to the sacred center of Thessaloniki.
It's quite a trip.
I am honestly trying to wrap my head around the ancient logistics of this. We are talking about moving giant, multi-ton blocks of marble across ancient landscapes without, internal combustion engines or modern cranes. It sounds like a logistical nightmare.
Oh, it was a monumental feat of engineering, but it operated much like, ancient flat pack furniture.
Like ancient IKEA.
Literally like ancient IKEA. The stonemasons didn't just drag whole columns across the dirt. They carefully dismantled the temple block by block.
Wow.
And to ensure they could put it back together, they carved numbering systems, Greek letters, into the unseen joints of the marble.
So they had an instruction manual.
Exactly. This way, when the blocks arrived in Thessaloniki, the builders had a precise guide for reassembling the structure, locking each specific piece back into its original neighbor.
Okay, so the engineering is brilliant, but the motivation is what really baffles me here. Why on earth would the Roman administration allocate the immense labor and wealth required to meticulously deconstruct, transport, and rebuild a 500-year-old local temple?
Right, why not just build a new one?
Exactly. Wouldn't it be infinitely easier to just build a brand new Roman temple to project their power?
Easier, yes, but far less psychologically effective.
Psychological warfare.
Completely. The Romans were masters of psychological warfare and assimilation. By adopting and literally uprooting the region's most sacred local history, they were co-opting the established religious power of the area.
So they're not just saying, hey, worship Jupiter now.
No, they weren't just imposing a foreign Roman god on a conquered people. They were taking the region's own ancient heritage, claiming ownership of it, and placing it squarely within their new administrative center.
That is so calculated.
It sent a crystal clear message. Rome is not just your conqueror. Rome is the new guardian of your most ancient traditions.
It's an incredible strategy of cultural absorption. And, this masterpiece has had a wild ride in modern times, too.
To say the least.
According to the archaeological records, it was entirely lost to time until 1936, when workers who were digging foundations for a 2-story house accidentally hit the marble.
Imagine that phone call to the boss.
Right. We found a temple. But then, astonishingly, it was essentially covered back up and ignored until the year 2000, when that same house was demolished to build a larger apartment building.
And that 2000 excavation was really a watershed moment. Alongside the eastern foundation of the temple, archaeologists unearthed 5 Roman-era statues.
Whoa. Which ones?
Well, these included depictions of the Emperor Hadrian, Zeus, and the goddess Roma.
Oh, come on. The goddess Roma right next to a 6th century BC Greek temple.
Exactly. It perfectly validates that Roman strategy of religious integration we just discussed.
It's literally the physical evidence of that policy. Yet, despite all this historical value, it almost became collateral damage to modern development.
Yeah, that's the tragedy of urban sprawl.
In 2012, bulldozers arrived at the site without a proper permit from the Central Archaeological Council, just ready to pour concrete.
Over a 2,500-year-old site.
Yeah. And the temple was only saved because local citizens and civic groups rapidly mobilized. They physically stood in the way of the machinery to halt the destruction.
Good for them, seriously.
Today, because of that civilian vigilance, the remnants of this archaic marvel are preserved, but they sit hidden in the dark, about 2.7 to 4.5 meters directly below the modern street level.
Which really serves as a stark reminder of how fragile urban history truly is. I mean, the survival of the past almost always depends on the active protection of the present generation.
Absolutely. And that ancient Roman habit of building directly on top of the past, it didn't stop in antiquity. In fact, the very street level we walk on today, the actual surface of Antigonish Street, only exists because a modern disaster forced the city to create a brand new blank slate.
You're referring to the Great Fire of Thessaloniki in 1917.
I am.
Yeah, if you look at archival photographs from around 1919 and 1925, you see a landscape that has just been utterly devastated. The fire consumed the heart of the city, basically erasing the chaotic, organic street layouts of the Ottoman era and leaving nothing but ash and rubble.
Just totally wiped out. But from that absolute devastation came this fierce architectural rebirth, relying on a 2016 government decision that exhaustively details the listed buildings in the area. The interwar period, specifically the 1930s, transformed the streets around Carioli and Demetrio and Antigonidon Square into this stunning visual canvas.
It really did. The government records highlight a massive influx of modernism, heavily influenced by the Art Deco movement.
Right.
We see specific, highly stylized features appearing on these new facades, things like sweeping curved balconies, intricate geometric ironwork, striking vertical symmetry, and Urkers.
Urkers. What's an Urker?
Oh, they are those projecting multi-story bay windows. They add this incredible dramatic depth and rhythm to the buildings.
Ah, okay. I can picture that. But I'm trying to picture the mindset of the people rebuilding the city, right? When you've just lost everything to a chaotic, unpredictable fire. Why choose Art Deco? What is it about those specific geometric shapes that appealed to a traumatized population?
It's actually a fascinating psychological response. After a disaster, people naturally crave order and control.
Makes sense.
So the strict mathematical geometry, the clean lines, and the verticality of Art Deco provided a sense of rationalism that the previous organic city layout lacked.
So it wasn't just like, oh, this looks pretty.
Not at all. It was a psychological remedy. By adopting these styles, Thessaloniki was making a bold statement of resilience. They were projecting an image of forward-looking optimism, firmly declaring their leap into European modernity.
So if you're walking down Antigonidon Street today, you have this mind-bending juxtaposition. Directly below your feet is a 2,500-year-old Hellenistic and Roman-appropriated marble temple. And when you tilt your head up, you're surrounded by towering, mathematically precise 1930s facades built from the ashes of a great fire.
It's like walking through a vertical time machine. And what makes this street particularly special as a modern destination is that this history isn't entirely locked away behind museum glass.
Right.
The street offers an immersive experience where visitors can actually inhabit the historical continuum.
Let's dig into that because our sources highlight a very specific example of this preservation philosophy. And that's the 4-star Imperial Palace Classical Hotel, which is located right at 13 Antigonidon Street.
Beautiful building.
Really beautiful. It sits right in the thick of this historical and commercial center, a short walk from Aristotle's Square and the historic church of Agios Demetrios. But what really stands out is its architectural identity.
Because it bucks the trend.
Exactly. In a neighborhood dominated by 1930s Art Deco, this building fiercely maintains a neoclassical and Victorian aesthetic, both on its facade and throughout its interior.
And this is where the evolution of the commercial center becomes so visible. A building like the Imperial Palace represents a critical anchor to the city's pre-fire or transitional architectural soul. The real challenge, which the sources note the hotel has navigated really successfully, is the philosophy of preservation. Because how do you adapt an interior that features delicate 19th century style frescoes and authentic paintings? How do you adapt that to accommodate 21st century plumbing, modern climate control, and digital connectivity without destroying the very heritage you're trying to sell?
It's an incredibly delicate balance. You have 70 boutique rooms and 2 luxury suites that have to function flawlessly for a modern traveler, but they are housed inside basically an aesthetic time capsule.
Right.
I do have to wonder, though, does sleeping under a Victorian fresco actually change your understanding of a city? Or is it just, high-end window dressing for tourists? Like, couldn't you learn just as much staying in a sleek, modern glass box hotel down the street and just reading a guidebook?
Well, I'd argue that a modern glass box oscillates you.
Fair point.
It removes you from the context of the environment. I mean, you could wake up in that room and be in Tokyo, New York, or London, and you wouldn't know the difference until you looked out the window.
That's very true.
But staying in a historically tailored space grounds you in the specific reality of Thessaloniki. It bridges the gap between being a passive observer and an active participant.
You feel it more.
Exactly. When you walk out the doors of a neoclassical building onto a 1930s paved street, knowing there is a 6th century BC temple underneath you, you physically experience the weight of the city's timeline. It provides essential context.
Context is everything.
Mhm.
So we've explored the underground ancient ruins, the post-fire 1930s rebuild, and the philosophy of inhabiting historical spaces.
We've covered a lot of vertical ground.
We have. So let's walk away from the hotel for a moment and step onto the modern pavement of Antigonidon Square as it exists today. If we strip away the romance of the history, what does this space actually feel like right now?
Well, the reality is sharply divided depending on who you ask.
Okay.
From an urban planning perspective, a recent university architectural thesis by Panagiotta Costanou paints a rather clinical picture. She describes the square as currently functioning as a non-place.
A non-place, that sounds like a term an architect uses when a space exists purely for transit, rather than as a destination for human beings, like a highway overpass. Is that what she means?
Exactly that. It's a space defined by alienation. She argues that heavy vehicular traffic currently dominates the area.
Oh yeah, it's super busy.
The continuous, loud flow of cars isolates the center of the square, squeezing pedestrians onto the narrow perimeter sidewalks. Local residents complain about the lack of green space, the pollution, and the total absence of a true public forum where people can safely gather, sit, and interact. On paper, it is a logistical bottleneck.
But urban planning papers don't always capture the human pulse of a city, do they?
No, they often miss the nuance.
Right. Because when you look at cultural sources, like an article from Parallaxy magazine titled 15 Steps Around the Square, you get a wildly different narrative.
They don't see a bleak transit hub at all.
No. They describe a street that is vibrantly, almost defiantly alive. They highlight a cult 80s and 90s neon fountain sitting right in the center that, when lit up at night against the traffic, feels like a retro trance party.
It is a phenomenal contrast. I mean, the academic thesis sees a failure of urban design, while the cultural magazine sees this vibrant, retro aesthetic that people have just naturally embraced.
And the cultural evolution of the street is happening in real time, too.
Yeah.
That same article highlights the blossoming of a new Arab neighborhood right around the square.
Oh, that's fascinating.
You have busy Arabic cafes filled with patrons, supermarkets stocking specialized Eastern brands, and this rich, distinct atmosphere right in the dead center of a European city.
Now, this is perhaps the most poetic layer of all. If you recall the Antigonid Dynasty we discussed at the very beginning.
The one-eyed and the besieger.
Exactly. Then their great legacy was turning this region into a cosmopolitan hub that bridged the East and the West.
Wow, yeah.
Today, with the emergence of this vibrant Arab neighborhood amidst Greek and European architecture, that ancient legacy is still functioning. The demographics shift, the dominant languages change, but Antigonidon Street's core identity as a cultural melting pot remains remarkably, stubbornly consistent.
That is, wow, that's a beautiful way to connect those eras. So we have this chaotic, beautiful, noisy mix of eras all colliding at once. But a city is never finished, is it?
Never.
Our sources mention a highly futuristic proposal by a Professor Caradetos that aims to solve the non-place traffic issue while finally honoring the ancient history buried below.
Yes, his proposal is incredibly ambitious and seeks to synthesize all these conflicting layers. He basically suggests reclaiming the space by engineering a two-level square.
A two-level square. Okay, how do you maintain the necessary city traffic while also exposing a fragile archaeological site?
You separate them vertically.
Oh, right.
His plan involves building an overpass or a raised, elevated section that would handle all the heavy, necessary vehicular flow, allowing the modern commercial city to function without interruption.
Okay, cars go up.
Cars go up. Meanwhile, the lower level would be entirely pedestrianized. This lower tier would be carefully excavated to permanently expose the 6th century BC temple of Aphrodite to the public,
Creating a sunken historical sanctuary beneath the rushing cars.
Exactly.
That is wild. You could just walk down a set of stairs off a modern, noisy street and suddenly be face-to-face with a temple older than the Parthenon.
Right in the middle of your commute. And the proposal incorporates modern technology to bridge the imagination gap, too. To show the temple's original glory without physically altering or damaging the ancient ruins, he proposes using advanced holograms to reconstruct its original form in thin air.
Holograph.
Yeah. Furthermore, he suggests utilizing the large blank walls of the surrounding 1930s apartment buildings as massive urban projection screens to display historical context and information about the site to the public above.
Okay, I want you to just pause and picture this wild juxtaposition for a moment. Imagine you're sitting in a modern Arab cafe, sipping coffee.
Okay, I'm there.
Across the street, an 80s neon fountain is glowing. You are surrounded by the strict, geometric optimism of 1930s Art Deco buildings. And right below street level, beneath an overpass of rushing modern cars, a 6th century BC marble temple is glowing with high-tech holograms. I mean, what does a space like that actually say about a city?
Well, it tells us that Antigonidon is not just a street, it is a living organism.
Yeah.
The current traffic, the noise, the seemingly chaotic blend of neon and marble, it is just the latest, thinnest layer of a 2,500-year-old story. It is the story of a city that constantly reinvents itself.
Just adapting to fire, conquest, and modernity.
Adapting to everything, building upward and onward while fiercely refusing to erase the foundations of its past.
What an incredible literal deep dive we've taken today. We've traced the geopolitical chess moves of the one-eyed Hellenistic kings. We've unpacked the ancient engineering required to flat-pack and relocate a massive marble temple of Aphrodite. And we've explored the psychological need for Art Deco architecture after the devastating ashes of the 1917 fire.
We really went all over the place.
We did. We questioned the philosophy of preservation at the Imperial Palace Hotel and ended up in a bustling, neon-lit, multicultural transit hub that might one day merge its ancient bedrock with holographic technology.
The sheer density of human experience compressed into such a small geographic footprint is truly exceptional. I mean, it changes how you view the ground you walk on.
Before we wrap up, I want to remind you one last time that this deep dive into the hidden layers of the city is part of the project. Odorphos Ishte Digro to Itafani. We've covered an immense amount of ground today, unearthing centuries of adaptation, but we want to leave you with something to chew on long after this is over.
Yeah, it raises a profound question, something for you to think about the next time you find yourself at a busy intersection.
Lay it on us.
Well, if the ancient Romans were capable of deconstructing and moving an entire marble temple just to shape their city's identity, and the 1930s generation found the resilience to rebuild their city into a geometric marvel from the literal ashes of a great fire, what responsibility does the current generation hold?
That's a heavy question.
It is. When urban planners finally manage to merge that underground ancient temple with the modern Sufis, what will this next layer of Antigonidon Street say about us to the people who will inevitably be digging it up 2,000 years from now?
Oof. Will they uncover a society that surrendered its public squares to cars and traffic, or one that used its technology to forge a deeper connection with its own history? Keep digging into the layers of your own cities. Look past the asphalt, and remember that every intersection has a story to tell. Until next time.